Hi, I'm Nisha DeGaring, host of Good Things Utah, and I've been a longtime supporter of Todd's Belief Cast. I hope you find inspiration in the courageous stories shared by the amazing people Todd features on his show. The guests serve as shoulders for us to stand on, allowing us to see a little further and cultivate belief in oneself. Remember, you have the dignity and power to change. I encourage you to keep striving and believing in yourself. Enjoy today's podcast.
I want to take a moment to express my heartfelt gratitude to the incredible sponsors of the Belief Cast podcast. First, Craig from Craig Swap and Associates. If you need an attorney, he's your guy. Trustworthy, compassionate, always there when you need him most. Next, Wasatch Recovery, the greatest university on the planet, transforming lives one day at a time. Sandy from Minky Couture, the creative genius behind the most comfortable blanket you'll ever wrap yourself in. Comfort like no other. The visionaries behind Thread wallets. These wallets redefine style and functionality. Dave Philippi from Micro Plus, pushing the boundaries of nanotechnology and scientific research to bring us cutting-edge supplements for optimal health. The Ralphs and the Debenhams, creators of Mori Nutrition and Calm. Because if you're struggling with sleep, feeling stressed, or can't focus, Calm is your answer. Special thanks to the award-winning pianist Paul Cardall for his beautiful music that brings inspiration to every episode. And finally, Gab Wireless, letting kids be kids and giving parents the peace of mind they deserve. Right now, Gab is offering $25 off any device to new customers with no contract required. That's $25 off any Gab smartphone or smartwatch. Just go to gab.com/belief. That's where you'll get the best deal. That's gabb.com/belief. Thank you to all these amazing sponsors for supporting the Belief Cast podcast and empowering us to continue spreading positivity and inspiration to the world. Welcome back, everybody. This is Todd Sylvester, the host of the Belief Cast. Today, I have the honor of speaking with Dr. Nicole Roberts. She is a true force for good in the world of health, human rights, and generosity. As the author of Generosity Wins, she unpacks the transformative power of giving and how it drives real success. She has a background in public health and policy. She advises world leaders. She's worked in crisis zones. She's very passionate about feeding the homeless and providing food for those who don't have it. We'll talk a little bit about that. She has a clear mission. Generosity isn't just a virtue, it's a game changer. So guys, get ready. We're going to be so blessed to be able to talk to Dr. Roberts today and to be able to get her insight on how powerful generosity is and how much this world needs that at this time. So is it okay if I call you Nicole?
Of course.
Okay, great. Just want to make sure. So Nicole, thank you for being here and taking some time out of your busy schedule.
Thank you. I'm so excited. You have had some incredible guests. I'm very humbled to now be in that family. Thank you.
Yeah, you're so welcome. And I've done a lot of obviously research on you. We touched base about 6 months ago, actually, and we've been trying to get this put together. And today it's all coming together. So I'm so glad for that. So why don't we start, Nicole, tell us where you grew up and maybe a little bit about your childhood.
Okay. Well, I was born in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Okay.
And I was there until my family moved to Missouri. And I then ended up, what really happened is my parents got divorced. And I actually ended up living with my dad. And his family was in the Ozark Mountains in Missouri. And so, of course, as a dad with a little girl, he needed all hands on deck. So
right.
we moved back to Missouri. So I had the privilege of being, when people say like it takes a village, I think that for me was very true. I was very lucky to have grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins that were basically like siblings. We were all right there. In fact, one of my aunts and my grandparents live on the same street, same block. So
oh, really? Okay.
Like, really, really close. We all went to the same schools. And so it's very different from the life I live now, which is so interesting. But yeah, so I grew up mostly in Missouri and then left for school, went to Chicago. And admittedly, since I left, I have only lived in cities. I think I stopped driving my first year out of high school, and I've not owned a car since. Like, I've lived in big enough cities that I take public transportation to walk. Yeah. So, I mean, just complete night and day.
That's amazing. Yeah.
I don't know if it was intentional. I think at like 18, 19, it was intentional.
Yeah.
But since then, no, it's just, we've made life in this city. And, but it is always nice to go home. And I now have a toddler, and I am really now appreciative of that Southern and Midwest lifestyle, and being able to run wild in the yard and be with such a big family. It's really nice. And I found myself missing it a lot lately.
Okay. Well, congrats on the toddler. And, you know, I got to say, I'm really impressed with the way you carry yourself and just the desire and passion you have to make a difference in this world. And it's so needed. Were you always like that, even as a younger child? I mean, did you come across as this very confident, powerful, you know, how was it when you were younger? What were you like?
Absolutely not. And I even think now coming across that way is a bit of a farce, but, you know, bios, I joke that, and I've said this before when doing speaking engagements, because someone will read your bio, and I'm like, it's basically just the Instagram highlights. And one of the examples I give is, you know, by the time I finished my doctorate, I had started a doctorate. My dissertation chair died. I had like all these things in my personal life fall apart. I took 6 years off, came back, and finally finished. But all the bio says is I have a doctorate in public health, right? And I'm like, a whole, like, almost literal a decade of life of craziness happened in there. But all this is, you're a doctor, right? Like, it's just, it's funny.
Yeah.
That.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah. So no, confidence has not always been there. In fact, I would say the opposite. But as I've gotten older, I think particularly as a woman, I had my son very late in life. And there's something about both that process of becoming a mother and hitting like a certain age. And I don't know what it is for most women. For me, it was after 35. I don't know why. It was like all of a sudden there were so many things I cared about other people's opinions or thoughts, or I had to get this credential. I had to check that thing off my list before I made it, or before I don't know. It's kind of like life. Just the older I got, sort of just went, whatever. Yeah. I also think, to be honest, I think the pandemic had a lot to do with it, because all of a sudden we could see sort of behind the curtain of a lot of people's lives. And I think it was really validating in its own way that you'd see, oh, here's a shelf with my book, but there's stuffed animals on the floor over here, right? And, and everyone lives that. Like, no one has a perfect life. That moment you see on stage, that bio, it's not the whole picture. We're all human.
Yeah.
And I think that actually gets to your question about, have I always been this way? I have always been very empathetic. Like, it's just built in me to be overly sensitive about certain things. And I had the privilege of, when I went to school, college, I did a lot of volunteering to do anything I could that was overseas. And so that would be like over the winter holiday or something, going, and I got to work in places like India and Nepal, and I got to see what other people in the world really live like. And then to come home and be in like a sorority house. I mean, it was just the cognitive dissonance in my head of what problems really are. Yeah. But to your question, I think the thing it showed me so early, and I really do consider it a privilege, is that we're all exactly the same. Like, we as a species have evolved so little.
Right.
The problem we're facing may look different. The way we handle it, the way we behave, the way communities then like, it's all the same. We are so human. It's remarkable. And so for me, I think everything I do in public health has always been really centered around neuroscience and that sort of behavioral aspect, which is humans are going to human no matter what. We can't help it. And for me, it's always just been this great level playing field. I don't care what thing you've achieved, what you could have done, we're all the same. We all make decisions, and we make them based on the information and the resources in front of us. And that's it.
Yeah.
And so,
No,
yeah, I've
that's
worked from that place for a very long time.
yeah. Well, and it kind of leads into my next question with, you wrote this book, Generosity Wins. I want to talk about this book, but a lot of times when you hear like generosity wins or that kind of narrative, I'm used to hearing like, it's the survival of the fittest. You gotta step on this person to get here, and you gotta, destroy this over here to get this. And so talk about why you wrote the book, what's the book about, and what we would expect if our listeners, if they were reading it.
First, it's not what you think it is.
Okay.
And by that, I mean, we don't know of another book written quite like ours. It is written as a business fable. So it's an easy story. In fact, I've had more than one person tell me they finished it in one day, if not two.
Oh, okay.
And even though it's a business fable, and so our main character is fictitious, every person she interviews in the book is a real person. And what we did is we put a QR code at the end of each chapter. Each one's like 18 pages. So you really can, like, it's an interview with her and this person. And you can hover over it and it'll take you to their LinkedIn page. Every person in the book. Like, you can connect with them, you can talk with them. And they're just remarkable people who truly live with what we call like a spirit of generosity. Like, no matter what they're working with or what place they're working from, like, they're just the people who naturally give of themselves. And they touch every, walk of life. And what we really wanted to get at is, what is success? Because a lot of people say, well, it's money, it's whatever. And here in America, in the States in particular, if you Google like generosity, it's almost always about philanthropy, a donor dollar, giving of money, right? And it's truly not. What we found is that's actually the least tangible form. Because you can go online and go, oh, I like that, click. And then you get an email that says, thank you, done. It's the end of the transaction. The giving of your time, your mentorship, your energy. I mean, like this right here, you and I are never going to get this back. You'll never get this hour of life back. And I'm so thankful that we're here. People listening will never get that time back. And so to give of yourself, your talent, and I mentioned mentorship. That's one that we found was so powerful. And by powerful, my co-author and I came at it from very different perspectives. And in fact, my co-author gets all the credit for this book. His name is Monty Wood. And Monty had this idea first. And it was about, when you give truly, genuinely, authentically of yourself, you attract success to you because people are inspired by you. If you're a business person, which is his world, they will, if they believe in you and your mission and that you truly care for them and their family, like, they will invest in you as well. And then you're all working towards the same mission. And so when he approached me with this idea, I said, yeah, absolutely. I don't know if there's any data behind that, but yeah, I mean, intuitively, it makes a lot of sense. The nicer and kinder you genuinely are, the more people actually want to work with you. And he really challenged me to take the other side of the coin and look at the science. And I didn't know what all I would get into. I looked everything from the Harvard Happiness Study, which is now 90 plus years in, to lots of primate research. And I was absolutely blown away. One of the biggest discoveries for me was, we're the only species on Earth that is truly generous. Primates do very generous things. They will share their food, they will share their shelter. But as soon as someone, like a male from a different, cohort comes in, they'll just as easily kill them, move on. It is what it is. The idea that we give of ourselves, often having no idea who it will touch, how many generations later that ripple effect might, help. We do it because it's good for our species. Like, we inherently know we have knowledge and things to pass on. And we just inherently do it. No other species on Earth does that. And so the moment I really started digging in, and then I, again, like with the happiness study, you find that people who give of themselves live longer. They are more successful in terms of monetary gains. Their marriages last longer. I mean, the list of things that one might define as success in a lifetime really add up by people who give. And the key is giving with no expectation of return.
Yeah.
And that's so important in our definition, because if you give and say like, well, you asked me to do this show, so I expect you to do whatever favor for me. It's a
Yeah. Right.
transaction at that point.
Yeah.
And I'm
Right.
here talking to you, just waiting for the thing that you owe me now.
Right.
That's not really a gift, right? That
Okay.
it
Right.
can be a generous act, but it's a transaction. And
Mm.
we have such good BS meters that really we do.
Sure.
People are very good at knowing it, a little bit into especially a face-to-face conversation of like, oh, you want this, you want an introduction to that person, you're looking for a whatever. But the idea of just giving of yourself with no expectation of return is the real differentiator.
Yeah. Well, I love that. And, you mentioned all these benefits that come from, being generous. And why do you think that is so? Like, why is it so good for us? I mean, again, I get the concept of, when we help someone, but what's going on? Like, why is it so good? Why do our relationships last longer? And why are we more healthy? Like, what's behind all that?
A lot of things.
Okay.
I would say the science side, like every now and then I go into it, but it tends to make people glaze over. But it starts in our brain, right? It's the chemical release, the neurotransmitters, the hormones. People like when, they call like a runner's high or a donor high, something, right? When you do good, you feel good. And all of a sudden this cascade event happens where your serotonin floods your brain. Right? But what happens here happens down here. And all of a sudden it moves through your body. It lowers your blood pressure. It decreases stress, which improves your sleep. Right. So all of these things, when we do good, our brain starts a reward cycle that inherently relaxes our body, which improves our overall health. And so by doing like acts of kindness or service, whatever, no matter how small it is, for other people, for yourself, it really does benefit your brain and your body, which inherently make you a nicer person. If you sleep better, you're a nicer person. On and on. Like it's this beautiful cycle that happens. Yeah. But then that ripples out. And that was something I found most fascinating about doing these interviews for the book. My side of the equation, I approached like my dissertation, and I had spreadsheets, and I would I would do the interviews with Monty, and then I would go back and listen to them again. And what I would do is I would track I called them like themes. There were definitive words that people would use repetitively. And I'm getting to your question about relationships. And other times it was themes. And there were a couple things that came. And one of them was karma. And the other was trust. And I was shocked at all the synonyms. People would say like, oh, it ripples out, or it comes back to you, or you may not be able to see it, but the ROI, right, of whatever. And what I realized is that everyone was talking about there's the inherent benefit to yourself, but when you put out good, it does come back. Like it may not look exactly the same, right? Again, to the transaction. It may not be that you paid for this, so someone else paid for that. It comes back in a different way.
Different ways, yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing people talked about was trust. And what we really discovered is that when, again, you give with no expectation of return, people build trust because they know you are there for the right reasons. You're speaking up because you care. You're listening to them because you care. And that builds trust. And trust is what makes strong relationships.
Right.
And so to us, it really became just a very simple equation. Yeah. Being generous builds trust, which builds relationships. And that is across friendships, families, business, you name it. Over and over again, we heard that same pattern.
Interesting. That's powerful. You talk about generosity as a game-changing superpower. That's a big description of something, right? And can you just explain like why this becomes this superpower? And I think you're already kind of alluding to this. I mean, there's this ripple effect when we start doing good things. It's like the karma thing. It's like all these good things start to kind of happen and move forward. But I mean, game-changing superpower. How so would you say that it's a game changer?
Well, again, it depends on sort of what facet of your life you're looking at. But I would say it's a game changer because there are so many people who are not raised in generous environments. They didn't grow up with people, communities, neighborhoods, schools, adults who really gave in that authentically, that spirit of generosity. And so one of the big questions I had asked was, can you teach generosity? Can you teach someone to be more generous? And I really didn't know if we could. And what I discovered in the end, especially after talking to educators, is that you can. You can teach people, and it's by demonstration. You can literally change the game of your life and of other people's lives by being that person that you want to be. And so what we had challenged people to do, we still do, but in the early days of the book launch, like we had like a real 30-day challenge that we put out, and we said for 30 days, because it takes a couple weeks, right, for behavior change to start to convince your brain it's the pattern to follow. Yeah. But to do something for someone else and something for yourself. Generosity should be 50-50. It's not all about give, right? You can't give when you're working from an empty place.
Sure, that's a good point.
And at that time, people repeatedly asked me, what was my thing? And at that point, I had a 1-year-old. He's now 2. And I said, at the end of each day, I take 5 minutes and I just go outside. And I can tell my husband would agree it was the most generous thing I could do for everybody. Between the baby and work, I needed to go take a big, deep breath and just sort of reset. And then I could start the evening and do the thing like as a kind of a whole person again. Okay. All I needed was 5 minutes to just sort of breathe fresh air and be away from all the demands. And it allowed me, right, to reset. And it changed the dynamic of our marriage, having a baby and trying to be a working mom, all those things. So I really do believe that being generous is a game changer, but it's how you apply it to your life. And yes, superpower is a word, and we even put it in the title. Yeah. And it terrified me when we were working on the title of the book. And it gets back to what I said, though, about we're the only species on Earth that is truly generous. And that is when I said it is a superpower. Yeah. It truly separates us and our species. And as a civilization, it's the thing that separates us from everyone else. And that is a superpower. And it means if we can harness it, we can propel, ourselves into the future in entirely new ways. But we all have to be in this together because we are, right? Yeah. No one lives on an island.
Yeah, right. If it's okay, I want to share a quick little part of my life. I was a drug addict alcoholic for 10 years, and my life changed when I gave all my money away to a little girl at a lemonade stand. And it's one of those things that I won't go into all the details. It's a long story, but it's literally like giving all my money to this little girl. And I ended up doing it every Saturday for the next 2.5 months. I just would drive by and give her all my money that ironically I was earning as a bartender. and I can honestly tell you what I just confirm what you're just saying right there, Nicole, is that, this is going to sound almost like I'm making this up, but I'm not. I gave all my money to this little girl at the lemonade stand, and what I got in return is I got my life back.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so when you say superpower, I couldn't agree more. It really was like this game-changing thing in my life. And I'm now clean 35 years because of that. And so thanks for letting me share that.
Well, thank you. And this is where I say like the overly emotional part when I hear that. So I'm glad you told a joke in there too, because I had to get out of the teary. But I love that example. And part of what I love about it is in your case, it's all the things. Because as much as I pushed back against it being monetary, the example you gave is one in which you gave money, but that's not what you were giving. You were the physical, right? Yeah. But what you were actually giving away, it was so much more than a financial handoff, right? Right. It was so much deeper and more meaningful, and very, very powerful. Have you kept up? Do you know where she is?
Yes. Matter of fact, we have stayed in touch this entire time. She actually is one of my best marketers. She sends clients to me all the time, and she's doing amazing things in life. And we text often. I just texted her the other day. I just had this overwhelming feeling of gratitude, and I just texted her, say, "Hey, thanks for saving my life again." And this is 35 years later, and so yeah, we're still in touch, which is great.
That is amazing. Thank you for
Right?
sharing that.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I was so, I guess, drawn to you and just what you're doing with the Generosity Wins, because I think, you probably noticed this obviously too, that the world seems to be lacking in this, and just in general, and I don't know. I just love when people are willing to do something like what you're trying to do here, is to throw this out there, because you link, like you've worked with athletes and billionaires and world leaders, and you link success to generosity.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you could just elaborate a little bit more on that for our listeners, because I think that's a fascinating thing to think about. You've obviously touched on it a little bit, but if you could expand on that just a little bit more for our listeners, I think that would be so well received.
Well, I think, and this gets back to when people give of themselves, and there are, we all know this, but just to give some example, there are people who have nothing and they give it all to someone at a lemonade stand, right?
Yeah.
There are people who have, as we think of it financially, everything, and they keep it to themselves. And there's others that we see, especially particularly right now, some women we can, I think, all think of, who have lots of money, and they're giving it freely to organizations and people that they think are absolutely deserving and advancing causes in the world that matter. We see the athlete side is an interesting one. I host an event at the Super Bowl with Lee Steinberg, who's an agent. And so I don't work in sport. And yet every year it's like these Hall of Famers and whatever. And this is well over a decade ago, but like the first few times I interacted with some of these guys, I didn't know what to expect. And I think I had a lot of sort of stereotypes in my head. And maybe it's also the guys who tend to have worked with Lee Steinberg, but the thoughtfulness with them about how do I use my platform, my voice. And it's not financial for them. It is, I have been given this opportunity. How do I share this in a way that is meaningful and impactful? And I remember in the early days, the word impact was used so often that at first I was like, is this real? Like, what do you mean by impact? Right? Is it like social media follow? Like, what do you? And really, so much of it went completely off the radar, unrecognized. The amount of things they did in their own communities and otherwise anonymously. And so much of what I learned from them is, and still to this day, having just come off of a Super Bowl, that imitative behavior, it is not lost on them. And I don't follow sport that much, but it is not lost on them, the millions of eyes, particularly young eyes they have on them, and how much their behavior, their causes matter. An example last year that I thought was so incredible. The suicide hotline came out, 988, and Dak Prescott and some other guys had cleats made, and the NFL gave them the thumbs up to have 988 on their cleats. And they specifically chose a Dallas Cowboys, I don't remember, a Dallas somebody game.
Right.
And I was like, why? And they said, because this will be the most watched game. And so they wanted to wait until that game. And I said, why will this one be? And they said, because it happens to be Texas and whichever other, and they said the purpose is in big cities, like where I live, Washington, D.C., we had billboards and things that said 988. And they were like, in the rural parts of Texas and whatnot, there's no advertising for this new hotline. And this group of athletes who had all lost a sibling, a parent, a loved one to suicide decided we have this ability to literally spray paint our shoes, and tens of millions of people will see it. They'll go, what's that? They'll Google it on their phone in real time, and they'll find out.
Wow.
Even now, it gives me goosebumps because it is such a simple act And yet it is a group of people going, how do we use the resources we have to touch people in a way that might change their life, save a life? And I've learned it doesn't matter where you come from, what you have, what you don't have. People are so creative with how to use their resources to do good. And it can look like so many things I, at least, had never thought of. And then it happens and you go, oh my God, it's brilliant. And it's so simple. Like, why have we not done this forever?
Right? That's amazing. That's amazing. I love, again, that you just have this passion for this, and I know you also have passion for other things as well outside of this. Obviously you wrote this amazing book. It's doing a lot of good. You're also really passionate about, feeding those that that don't have food and stuff. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, just so our listeners understand what the passion comes from there?
Absolutely. So again, back to the early days of my work overseas. So I've worked in a lot of disaster areas, recovery zones, and really low resource areas. So like Haiti, post-earthquake, etc. I spent a lot of my time in India and Nepal and Bangladesh. And we as people, food, like there are very few things we need, like actual, like in the hierarchy of needs: food, water, shelter, and interaction.
Right. Yep.
And food is one of those that I had always thought of, you can see data points of like people who are food insecure tend to eat worse food. They're more likely to be obese. They have hoarding food behavior. So, from a very young age, food significantly impacts our behavior, who we are, how we see ourselves in the world.
For sure.
And yet it never really hit me until I had agreed to do a lot of work around food security in women and girls. And in most of the world, women and girls are the primary agriculture people. Like if you go to someplace like India, it's women who are out in the fields. And yet they're always the last to eat. They get the leftovers. They're doing the cooking, the cleaning, and everything else. Girls are often married off early. I mean, we see lots of exploitative behavior because of food insecurity. And one of the first things I did with this organization called Feed a Billion was an event in which we asked people to tell us words. And there was some creative group that said, oh, let's, collect words. And I was like, okay, great, we'll collect words. And I think in my head, like delicious, yummy, full, things like that, right, came to mind. It was the most humbling experience. And it's probably gonna make me choke now. The girls we interviewed used words like worthy.
Ooh.
Giving them food made them feel worthy of existing.
It's amazing.
And I remember just being so devastated that a meal could make someone feel like they were worthy of being here or not. And that on a daily basis, they were made to feel that they were not worthy of a basic human need. And to know so many children in the world feel that way, I couldn't not then obsess in every way. And it was so powerful. And I've come now to see just example, one after the other in every cohort that exists on earth about the power of nourishment. And that's the word we often use, is nourish. And I love that definition because if you Google the word nourish, it's not just like sustenance for the body. Yeah. We use it like you nourish your soul. And it just really hit me that food, good food, it does that. It doesn't just nourish our bodies. It's our hearts, our minds. And in children, you can't focus. If you can go to school, but your stomach's hungry, you can't sit and focus. You can't sit still in your chair. You're not absorbing the material. Like, it impacts everything in these children's lives. And so for me, it just became one of those, you can't solve every big problem. You can't change, cultures and their priorities overnight. But for me, food security just became this space where I really, really started to, and still believe every meal matters.
Yeah. Wow. When you said they feel worthy, that hit me so hard.
Can you
Like,
imagine a little girl? That's the
no,
word that comes to mind when she's given food.
unbelievable. It really, honestly, just changed my paradigm on how blessed I am that I get food and that I'm worthy that I get to partake of a dinner tonight. And I don't know, that just really hit me so hard, Nicole.
It,
Wow.
I was a wreck for like a week after that.
I can only imagine,
And
especially hearing it from a little girl.
And we kept trying to figure out, how do we use this? And that sounds kind of weird, but like,
Yeah.
I don't know how to tell that story. And there's no world in which I can speak it. It can have an impact on you. It still impacts me. That was years ago. The way a child saying that, just like, I mean, it knocked us all on our butts. Like
Oh, yeah.
I was like, I don't know how to help get that message to everyone. Like, I don't know how to, there aren't enough rooftops to shout from to let people know that a meal can make that big of a difference in someone's life.
For sure. Well, and the other thing that struck me is just, and I totally agree with you. I know when I eat really healthy, I feel so good, right? Like, and you talked about how that does impact our behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
And, so if a young child is not only not maybe eating enough, but also eating the wrong, maybe high fat, high sugars,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of stuff, again, they're not going to show up the way they need to show up in life. And I think that probably also there's links to that type of eating to depression and
Absolutely.
and it kind of snowballs in the wrong direction in that. But so to hear you say that, it makes so much sense that how important it is that people not only get the food they need, but the right type of foods.
It is very powerful.
Yeah. Well, you've done a lot of things, and you're doing so many great things. You did a TED Talk, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
I did. Yeah.
Yeah. How was that experience?
Honestly,
Yeah, please.
I'm kind of embarrassed by this. I've never been more terrified in my life. So I do a lot of speaking engagements.
Sure. Yeah.
And I'm really weird. So I'm more uncomfortable at it for people who watch the video. I don't know if you can tell. Like, I'm more uncomfortable doing this than I am on a stage. There's something about sort of like, I think when you hold a microphone and you're talking about something you care about, and it's just kind of like dots out there,
Right.
or you can connect with a couple people and you see them nodding. You're like, yeah, it feels more like you're having a conversation. This medium to me is so weird because I see you, but I also see a big me. And I like try to do everything in my power not to look at that half of my screen because it's weird.
I know. I agree with you. I really do.
So this makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I thought, a TED Talk. They were like 10 minutes, right? 10 minutes or less. Okay, cool. Yeah. And they wanted it to be on something related to the book and the science behind generosity. And so I thought, okay, great. I can talk about the neuroscience and what happens to our body. Like, cool. I can talk about science for 10 minutes. Sometimes you can't shut me up, right? And then there are all these rules and you got to do this, but it needs to be a compelling story. And then they also want some tangible examples. And something got in my head where I was like, I don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
And then we drove. My husband hates to fly, and he was like, "Well, we'll drive to give your TED Talk." And so my husband drove. We have a toddler who we found out now is severely car sick. So it should have been a few-hour trip. Took us like 12 hours.
Oh.
We went through every change of clothes we packed for him by the time we got there.
Oh no!
Because then he finally got Dream. I mean, doesn't side quest on that, but so we arrived at like 4 a.m. So I was exhausted.
Oh,
I was tired. I had been thrown up the entire day before. We get there. They mic me up to do the test. And I realized on this stage, it is these two bright lights. Like I couldn't see anything. And all they said was just stay in the red circle, right? The red carpet. I don't know that I've ever, or maybe once or twice, like had like a real panic attack. I had like, I hit the point, I actually went back to the hotel room to change, and I told my husband, I was like, I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm mentally not here. I don't think
Yeah.
it's good. And he was just like, run through it a couple times. And then of all things, this is way too long of an answer, but of all things, he said, just talk to me like while you're getting ready. So I did.
Yeah.
And then he stopped me and he goes, whatever you're doing with your hands, don't ever do that. And I was like, what am I doing with my
Yeah.
hands?
Yeah. Right.
It sounds so silly, but all of a sudden I realized I had nothing to hold on to. I didn't have a microphone, a podium. I didn't have a chair to sit in. I wasn't confident in my words, even though I know I had done all the research. I had written them. I knew what examples were important. I would say while the person, because they do a cohort of individuals, and while the guy in front of me was finishing his, I actually told the woman, the final, because you go through a series of people, the final woman to send me out on stage. Yeah. I was like, I can't. And she did the craziest thing. And she goes, do you need a self-regulating hug?
Oh, wow.
And I go, I think so. And this woman gave me the biggest hug. And she just kind of held me and she said, you're going to be fine. You've done this 100 times. And I just was like, thank you. And she goes, it's your turn, go. Wow. And I went out and did it. And I did the TED Talk, and I don't remember a single second of it. It's like I just kind of went blank in my head, and I came back, but apparently I did it, and I've gotten great reviews and views on it. Sorry, that was like the wildest answer, but it was the honest.
No,
I have never in my life been more fearful of my own words. I don't know what I thought was going to happen out there. And then this woman, I don't know into this moment, I couldn't tell you her name, but I need to find out and thank her again. Yeah, I mean, the day of, I thanked her like 100 times. But she just gave me a big hug. And that was it. And it was like I just snapped back into myself.
You know, that is so beautiful. Here you are out preaching and teaching generosity. And in that moment of your despair, what did you get? You got some generosity.
And to the point of the definition that we came up, nothing in return. She didn't want anything. She wanted, all she wanted was for me to get my shit together.
Exactly.
No, she just, I to this day, or I'll die remembering, do you need a self-regulating hug? In the moment, I don't even think I knew what she meant. I think I was just like, hug, a hug would be nice. Okay.
Wow, that's amazing. Wow. I am so glad I asked you that, because I did not know that behind the scenes, because I've watched your TED Talk, and it's you would never know. I mean, you obviously were doing fantastic, and you did a great job. And again, you're good at all the things you're doing. It's so impressive. I wanted to ask you, this is going to seem like a strange question, but I ask this sometimes to my guests, but what do you love most about you?
I don't know. I don't like the answer that came to my mind. It's probably true. I would say that I'm resilient. And I don't like it because then it means like you have to be resilient. Like you have to always kind of be ready to make things work even when they don't. But I think, growing up with the childhood I had and a lot of the experiences I've had, I've learned the phrase I've heard and I love was like, this too shall pass. Mm-hmm. No matter how good it is, how bad it is, like it's going to pass. This moment will pass. And I think for me, that's kind of the equivalent of resilient, which is, I can hate something or think it's impossible, and especially some of the situations I work in, right? I mean, they feel insurmountable in real time. And yet I've reached a point where I'm like, we'll figure it out to the best of our ability. Are we going to
Love
save
it.
everyone? No, we're not. Are we going
Wow.
to do better than zero? Yes, we are. And that's going to have to be good enough. Like,
Yeah.
so maybe resilient isn't the right word for that, but
I think it fits, and I think it's great, you know. And I look at all you're doing, and it makes sense to me when I hear you say that.
thanks. I don't know. No one's ever asked me
Yeah,
that question
yeah,
before.
I know. That's why I like asking it. You know, keep you on your toes a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here's my next question: if there's someone listening to your voice right now, and they are tuned in, and they're struggling, and they're in a dark place, and they're not sure how to get out of it, what would you tell that one person right now?
First of all, you do matter. Everyone matters. We're here for a reason. And to what I just said, this too shall pass. You have made it this far. You will make it out of wherever it is you are. And not to bring it back to the book for bringing it back to the book purposes, but, you know, to your example, it doesn't matter how low we get. There is a place from which we can give, even if it's to ourselves.
Yeah.
And from that place, you can do good in the world. And it could just be to yourself. It could be to a parent or a sibling you've avoided talking to. It could be a stranger who's selling lemonade. You have something to offer someone that the moment you offer it to them, their world changes too. Like there's no action or interaction you have with another person that doesn't impact that person.
Wow. Beautifully said. I really love that answer. And I'm grateful that you shared that, because I can guarantee you, Nicole, I have people tuning into this all the time who are in that place. So thank you for your wise words, and again, for your example and what you're doing. And so you're obviously doing a lot. What's next on the docket for you? What big plans do you have that you could maybe share with us?
Well, we're recording this at the endish of February 2025. And so the answer in this moment is I don't know.
Okay.
In fact, I had a big contract that is coming to an end, and I am actively figuring out what comes next. The book has come out. I have this nice sort of closure to the thing I've been doing and I've thrown myself into. And I know what's next is big. And I have my human rights firm, so I always have work to do. But as for like what actually comes next, I don't know. I want to relaunch my podcast. I want to dive into a project, an organization, a mission of some kind that is big and bold. But as of this exact recording, I don't know what it is. I hope to know in the next few weeks or so. I mean, I got bills to pay, but
right?
I don't know. Yeah. I don't have any secret thing to share. Maybe in a few weeks I will. I hope when you post this, I can reply and be like, guess what?
Yeah, that would be great.
Guess what I'm doing?
Well, and I think, I have no doubt that something is going to present itself to you, and you're going to like, yep, this is where I'm going. This is what I'm going to do. And again, I just
your mouth is
can't
God's ears.
No, I love it. I love talking to you, Nicole. This has been such a great interview. I appreciate your time in your busy life to spend some time with me today.
You are so thoughtful and fun. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, no, you're so welcome. And much success for this book. I hope the book just continues to sell really well, because again, I think the world is lacking in this in so many regards. And I just know that when I'm more generous in my life does go better. I see it every time. The moment I start becoming a little more selfish, and sometimes I don't catch it all the time,
sure,
I'm wondering why I'm struggling. And then I'm like, yeah, Todd, you're being a little selfish, So,
and we're, we're human. It's bound to happen. Yeah. We don't stay in a static place, right? We're all over the place. Every situation we do, like I said earlier, we do the best we can with what we've got. And sometimes it's our best, and sometimes it's not. But small acts of goodness in the world, small acts of giving. I really do believe one small act at a time, it has such a big impact.
I agree. If people want to reach out to you, Nicole, and learn more about you, to order your book, just, to follow what you're doing, what's the best way for them to do that?
Probably Google. I mean,
just Google her name and
I'm easy to find. Although there are a lot of Nicole Roberts in this world. That's why I always use the F, like Nicole F.
Yes.
Because my name's so basic. But Generosity Wins. Generosity Wins is the name of the book. And it is easy to find, and you click on the book, and I'm there in all the social medias and whatever. So and I will tell you, we have a website, generositywins.us, us. And on our website, the emails there are mine and Monty. So if you email that Nicole Perfect. Generosity Win, it comes to me. Monty and I answer our own email. So if you actually want to reach me, you can email me.
Yeah, great. Yeah. Well, I'll put those links in the show notes when we go live, and awesome. I hope that people will reach out to you, and hopefully we can get more traction in what you're doing. So, again, Nicole, you're amazing. Again, I love the way you carry yourself. Here's to much success to you and your beautiful family, and I'm sure you're going to continue to do amazing things. And I'm grateful that I got to do this interview and know you a lot better now.
Me too. I'm really grateful to you. Thank you. This was a really fun hour. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, there you go, folks. I told you were in for a good one today. Dr. Nicole F. Roberts. I got to put that F in there. She's amazing. Please check her out. Click the links in the show notes. Go buy her book. Share it with your family. Share it with your loved ones. Let's get the word out here. And again, thank you for tuning in week after week. Again, thanks to my sponsors. I love you guys for believing in me. It means the world. And until next time, everyone, love you.